Welcome to Crossing Darkness, a podcast about role-playing games ranging from the World of Darkness tabletop setting to MMORPGs like EVE Online and everything in between. We will be broadcasting live over Twitch and are open to answering questions during the show. I'm your host, Frozen Fallout. My co-host is Motor Rory, who helped me create this podcast as well as a 40-person, 4-table Gen Con event. How's it going, Moto?
Oh, pretty good. And hello to everyone out there today. And today we will be talking about Demon the Fallen, one of the last game lines to come out for World of Darkness. So let's get started with that. Josh, what is Demon the Fallen?
So Demon the Fallen is primarily a game that focuses on taking over the fallen angels of the Great Rebellion against their creator. Due to their love for humanity is the kind of way that they kind of spin this whole thing, is that the demon or the angels were convinced that there was some kind of horrible thing that was going to happen way in the future, and that they had to prepare the humans and get them from the base level that they were at to something that could fight this great, or change this great darkness that was going to happen deep into the future. So they ended up rebelling against the other host of angels, as well as their creator. And the idea is that they were all thrown into the abyss. And so after they lost that war, that rebellion, they basically, at the beginning of humanity or whatever, we're all thrown into the abyss. It's the base, story from the Bible, right? They all get thrown into, quote-unquote hell, with a bunch of, I believe, humans were thrown in there with them that rebelled as well. I'm not 100% sure about that, but they do talk about them, like, torturing human souls inside of the abyss. So there's ways for, apparently, the abyss to get human souls, or got human souls. I haven't actually dug too deep into how that all goes, but in any case, they spent like millennia just torturing human souls and torturing each other, and they built up this, what they call, as torment in the game. And so it's what turns a angelic angel into a demonic creature. So all of them are still technically angels. They all have the same powers that they had before, but there's a little bit of an enhanced twist on them. And it's actually like torment makes you more powerful. But it's,
is torment one of the things that's on the character sheet?
Yes, yep. And it gets you, like, as you progress in your torment, you get more powerful as you get to add like certain things onto your angelic form, or your demonic form, that you can turn into. And
is it close to a ret or something else?
Torment is more closer to your humanity in Vampire the Masquerade. So the more that you have in torment, the less humanity you have. It's like a backwards trait. So, and then it also is corresponding to not necessarily a ret of any way, shape, or, because it doesn't necessarily make you more powerful in direct, roles of stuff from what I believe, and from my gaming of it. It's much more of a focus on this kind of as you boost up that power, you're able to use it to enhance. You can kind of spend it like quiescence or gnosis or rage. It's kind of like rage, I guess, a little bit. You can use it to enhance your powers, but your powers don't require that. They usually require faith, and faith is more like nos or quiescence and stuff like that. So I guess it would be kind of similar to rage, but as you get build up in it as well, you get to add on to your torment. You get these higher torment abilities that when you turn into your demonic form, you have, like, now you have claws, or you have, and it gets like more progressively more powerful as it goes. So your demonic form or your angelic, it starts off as like an angelic form, and then it gets tormented into a demonic form. And everybody starts with some torment.
Yeah. So that kind of leads into the next question. Now, you have written down who are the antagonists. I think you mean protagonists, unless you were going a different direction there.
I'm going with different direction with that question. That is, I'm actually.
So we'll get.
But that's later.
We'll get to the.
But yeah, real quick.
We'll get to that in a bit. Then the protagonist. Yeah.
Real quick though, the one things that we have here is that they all got thrown into the abyss, and then the great maelstrom happened, knocked everybody out, and now a bunch of demons have escaped from hell, basically, and you get to play one of these escaped demons. Yeah, if you want to go over the different houses that we have, and we can kind of explain what the different demons are that you can play.
All right, so I'll start reading right after the word houses here. The 7 houses of the fallen, the Sebetu, were created by God in the first days of creation. It is impossible for a fallen to change their house. It is, in a very real sense, the core of their beings, an essential part of who they are. The first house is devils, Namaru. The first house created by God, leaders on both sides of the rebellion. The devil's affinity is for radiance, enabling them to command mortals and demons alike, and granting them power over fire. Do you want me to read all of them?
Yeah.
Or do you want to comment on each one?
No, I think we can just go through and just, we'll just comment on it afterwards.
Okay. Scourges, the Asharu. The angels of the firmament were the second house to be created. They were the ones who guided the winds of creation, who granted the breath of life to all living things, and who define the spiritual connections between living beings. The third house, malefactors, or Anunnaki. The third house, the angels of the fundament, were the makers of form, the shapers of creation. They defined spatial relationships, the paths from one place to another. Theirs is the power to shape the earth and to make and empower astonishing artifacts. Fiends, or Neberu. Once again, the angels of the spheres were the ones who set the stars in their great design, who gave them the light to shine, using their mastery of portals to travel the great distances required. Now the fourth house fears what has become of the design in their absence. Fifth, defilers, or the Lemasu. Originally angels of the deeps, the fifth house have an affinity with fluidity, giving them power over water, emotions, and even their own forms. Devourers, or the Rabisu. Once the angels of the wild, warriors without equal, the sixth house can command animals and plants alike, as well as shaping and reshaping the flesh of other beings as they desire. And the last one, Slayers, or Halaku. The house of the second world, the final house to be created, the Slayers have dominion over endings and death. They can destroy the things of the physical world, command the spirits of the dead, and even enter the underworld.
So those are like the different houses that you can kind of pick from. I haven't really gotten really deep into each one of the houses individually, but it's a nice little like breakup of here are the different types of people that you can kind of or creatures that you can kind of play as, and I think they divvied them up pretty well.
Yeah, so I'm guessing that this is closest to in Werewolf it would be like Galliard and I can't remember words right now.
The tribe. It would be the tribes. So these
would it be the tribes?
Yeah, this is all of the tribes. This is all of the clans. This is all of the traditions. This is so this is the group that you pick that you become part of.
Oh, okay. But in general, if you were going to play a game of Demon, it would probably be a mix, kind of similarly to like a mage game.
It can be, yep, absolutely, just the same way as like any games. You can kind of pick any one of the houses, and some of them work better together than others, of course.
Yeah. And it looks like from the wording, they have different base powers and powers they have access to.
Right, yep. So that kind of dictates what your powers are going to be as well. Jumping into that, why don't you kind of go over what the different powers that they have are?
All right, let's see.
So that would be the house lores at the bottom there.
House lores. History of lores. All right, so for the devils. The mandate of the heralds was to spread the light of heaven to every corner of creation and orchestrate the efforts of the entire celestial host in shaping and design. Central to their duties was the lore of the celestials, comprising the knowledge of harnessing heaven's will and later mortal faith to locate, inform, and support the efforts of other celestials. No less important was the lore of flame, granting the heralds mastery of the primal, purifying fire of creation, and a terrible weapon to wield against their foes. The lore of radiance, encompassing the secrets of inspiration and leadership, wasn't one originally bequeathed to the heralds, but that evolved among the devils during the Age of Wrath, as these noble leaders and champions refined the power to inspire, command the mortal allies of the fallen. Alright, so
yeah,
that's a lot of reading if I'm going to do all of them at once.
Yeah, we'll break these up a little bit. Let's just talk about that a little bit. So the Devil's one is your pretty straightforward kind of lore that they have. And so they break these down into, like, these are, like, the special, like, it's knowledge that gives you, and lore that is giving these, them their power. It's not necessarily, something that comes from, inward powers or something like that. So anybody can learn, or any of the angels can learn any of these lores, but some are innate to a house.
Yeah, it's kind of like the main sphere of each tradition, or the main powers of a certain clan.
Yep.
In Vampire, yeah. And it looks like they have fire powers.
Yeah, so this
mostly,
is pretty straightforward fire, kind of powers that they get, and the lore of radiance, I believe, is their main, or no, which one was it? So there's the lore of flame is the one that they have. They also have, like, the lore of radiance, which is the like light kind of powers that they have.
And it looks like the other one they have is lore of the celestials.
Yes, that's the main one, I believe, that they have.
Okay. So the different power structures in Demon are these lore of the things.
Yes. Yep. So if you have lore of the lore of the celestials, you have the ability to comprise the knowledge of harnessing heaven's will and later mortal faith to locate, inform, and subject and support the efforts of others. So basically, these different lores give you different kind of powers that are really cool.
Yeah. Do they exist on a track where it's like kind of like wraith powers? 1 to 5. And then each dot gives you a new power, and then a lot of your dice rolls are usually based on the number of dots that you have in that power.
I'm trying to remember if it's either a skill plus attribute or an attribute plus normally it's a skill plus the attribute. Or like the ability plus attribute, sorry. Like dex plus
okay.
Firearms or something like that.
Oh, so the power itself calls for a specific roll most of the time.
Yes, yep. And each dot gives you a power, a specific power, and then that power can be enhanced with torment.
Oh, okay. All right, so moving on to scourges. The angels of the firmament ruled the winds beneath the starry vault of heaven and bore the living breath of God to man and beast. The lore of awakening was central to this sacred task, infusing the bodies of the newborn with the spark of life and keeping their charges free from sickness and injury. Before the fall, each creature that received the blessing of life was bound thereafter to the angel who awakened it, allowing the guardian spirits to sense when their children were suffering or in danger and could rush to their side. The innate bond was lost to the Asharu after the fall, but over time the Scourges amassed a collection of lore that restored a fraction of their far-reaching awareness, the lore of the firmament. Secondary to their duties as investors of life, the task of directing the currents of air that sustained the life of paradise was contained in the lore of the winds.
Yeah, so these guys, used to have like these lores that, and that's one thing that I like. That's an interesting thing, is that a lot of even what you get access to here is not what their full potential actually is. And I think that that's like the 6 through 10, and you don't. I'm not sure if they ever came out with a book that went through like what their 6 through 10 powers would be, and I don't believe they did. But yeah, because this focuses on what happens, kind of after the fall, and so that their powers are more, about investing in life, and it's an interest, because it's like if you're going with wanting to become more angelic, you would go with investing in life, and then I believe that if you're demonic, you would be going with like tormenting and bringing down life and destroying life, then, which is why you're the Scourges if you're a demon.
So are there two different tracks, or so you bring up this concept of angelic versus demonic?
Well, because it's what the powers wouldn't be different, but how you use them would be. And it's the idea of whether your character, when he comes out of the abyss, is he going towards just trying to destroy and kill humans and being like, I got fucked up in the abyss and fuck humans now, I'm just gonna, and look what they did, like look at how shitty they are when you come out of the abyss. And that's what a lot of them did. But then there's a lot of them that came out and were like, we're here to fight for the humans, like that's what we did, or that's why we rebelled in the first place. So they kind of, and there are no angels left, and there's no heaven left or anything like that. So when it comes out, and that's where I had the what is an antagonist, what is their antagonist? Because when they come out, there is no antagonist. There is no angels that they're there to fight, and there's no other like great powers when they kind of come out to necessarily fight. What demons do is they fight with each other. Some of them are good demons, and some of them are bad demons. Just being a fallen angel doesn't make you a bad person. The problem is that all of them are completely fucked up by being stuck inside of the abyss, and it makes it so that and also if when you come out as like you look at humanity and look what they did, you're like, well, fuck these people. Like they didn't do anything with all these gifts that we give them. So it's a way of different kind of point of views that you can have, but the basis of demon is to look at it, just like they did with vampires and werewolves, is to look at the monster in a different light and say the monster isn't necessarily evil, it's the shit that happens to them or the shit they have to do that makes them evil, in order to continue their existence.
All right, so just to review, the Scourges had Lore of Awakening, Lore of the Firmament, and Lore of the Winds. And then we'll move on to the Malefactors. Though seldom seen, the Artificers were responsible for maintaining the ever-changing face of paradise, carving valleys, raising mountains, and extended plains in a slow, steady cycle of motion that simulated all other cycles of physical life. This prime duty was represented by the lore of the earth, granting these angels the secrets of shaping rock and soil, no matter how vast or small. Hand in hand with this enormous task went the responsibility of making the earth accessible to every living creature that inhabited it by laying pathways from one location to another. The lore of paths is a subtle but potent collection of evocations that dictates how a physical object passes from one point to another. Humanity believes that the shortest distance between 2 points is the straight line, but that's only because the angels of the earth wished it so in times past. Though these potent arts were central to the existence of paradise, their ways were slow and indirect by mortal standards. When the war began, the Anunnaki sought a way to make their powers more immediately useful to their demon and mortal allies, which led to the synthesis of demonically enhanced weapons and tools. These methods, encompassed in the lore of the Forge, are now considered to be the hallmarks of the malefactors.
Yeah, so these, they get, they get correspondence, basically. They get matter, and they get, kind of an ability of Prime, the ability to make magical demon forged weapons. And the malefactor, these guys I like a lot. They're the ones that if I probably was playing in a Chronicle, I'd like to play one of these. I like making.
Yeah, they definitely.
Artificers.
Yeah. The only thing that I question with this is why they named them malefactors, because that quite literally translates to bad actor. Like, entity who does bad things.
That is a good question. I wonder. I bet it's pointed out in the book somewhere. Because these are their demon names, not their not their angelic names. The angelic names was the second name that you were reading off.
Yeah. But yeah, so they've got Lore of the Paths, which is probably pretty close to correspondence. Lore of the Forge is kind of matter / building stuff, and Lore of the Earth is... do you have anything off the top of your head, like what Lore of the Earth would give you?
That's more like matter. I would say that's more like matter. Forge is more Prime, and building stuff. With just Prime to build stuff, because Prime allows you to make magical items.
Yeah, that makes sense. Alright, so on to the Fiends. Humanity views the universe as an impossibly vast panorama of galaxies, stars, and planets, each object adrift on a sea of emptiness, spreading like ripples in a pond. The angels of the heavens know differently. All elements of creation, no matter how vast or insignificant, are dependent on one another in a delicate balance of power, motion, and direction. It's a grand mechanism that only God could conceive, and one that the angels were ordered to monitor and maintain in perpetuity. Central to this task was the lore of patterns, allowing the angels of the fourth house to study the motions of the grand design and predict possible problems before they occurred. Even then, the design was so large that even the Elohim could view only a small portion at any one time, leading to the creation of the lore of portals, secrets that allowed the angels to travel the length and breadth of reality in the blink of an eye. Finally, like the Anunnaki, whose duties would normally have kept them far from mortal eyes, the Nibiru struggled to use their powers directly in the struggle against the host of heaven. The lore of light emerged during the war as the fiends learned to use their knowledge of light and perception to weave potent illusions.
Yeah, so sweet. So they get illusionary magic. They get the entropy, basically the lore of patterns.
Yeah.
And then
lore of portals is kind of correspondence, but specifically... Is it specific to travel?
I think it is specific to travel to a certain degree, but it's probably similar. More, I believe that I believe it's a little bit more open to that as it gets more powerful. Because I believe that it might be similar to like celerity and stuff like that with extra actions, possibly. But maybe not. Maybe it is just travel, though. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. Well, maybe one day we'll have to do episodes where we just go over specific powers from different games.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Anyway, so on to the Defilers. The mercurial angels of the deep were meant from the beginning to lead a lonely existence, close enough to inspire human hearts, yet eternally out of reach. The lore of longing, with its power to inflame human hearts, was the core of the house's collected wisdom, but mastery of wind and wave also led to the evolution of the lore of storms, allowing the angels of the deep to reach far over dry land as well. Ironically, once the Lamassu had forsaken their oath to heaven and were able to show themselves openly to mankind, the rebels found themselves ill-equipped to relate directly with humanity. They were far more comfortable showing men and women the faces that they wanted to see rather than risk being viewed for what they truly were. Therefore, these mutable spirits refined the art of transforming their appearance at will to suit the expectations of those around them, and the lore of transfiguration emerged.
Yeah, so these guys are pretty fucking awesome. The lore of storms, along with the ability to change your appearance, obfuscate, like Mask of 1,000 Faces and stuff like that is always a really cool power.
Yeah. What do you know about the lore of longing? It says the power to inflame human hearts.
So it'd be more like a presence. Would be the so
Like
it's
being able to influence people, get them to do stuff for you.
Yeah, it's like it's influence over their emotions rather than their mind.
Yes. All right, and is the lore of storms just weather powers?
Yeah, it's like that's it. It's more similar towards like Path of Flames, or the lore of flames is like all about fire. This is all about storms and electrical stuff.
Interesting. All right, onto the Devourers. The Lords of Wood and Claw were made to rule the wild things of the world, shaping flora and fauna according to the Creator's plan and shaping each one's role in a complex and dynamic ecology. The lore of the beast defined their mastery of animal, fish, and fowl, allowing them to summon, command, and shape the bodies of their subjects, while the lore of the wild comprised the collected secrets of forest and field. The lore of the flesh came later, during the war, as the Rabisu turned their arts to shaping human flesh for the fury of the battlefield. Okay, that's an interesting one.
These guys remind me a lot of the Gangrel vampire, actually. Like they're the woodland like guys. They have basically the animalism, or the ability to control animals. They have the ability to command the secrets of forests and fields and stuff like that. So they have like plants and animals underneath their control. And then they have the lore of the flesh, which allows them to basically boof up any kind of flesh creature and give them badass like weapons and shit like that.
Wow. Yeah, so druids, basically.
Yeah. Badass druids.
Alright, so on to Slayers, the last one. Alright, Slayers. Although they're known today as the Angels of the Second World, the Slayers were originally mere agents of change, eliminating plants and animals that had outlived their purpose to make way for new, better generations. The lore of death granted them the power to end life quickly and painlessly, then render the bodies of the dead back into their constituent particles for the earth to absorb and begin anew. Of all the houses, the Halaku were forced to evolve the most in the wake of the fall. With the loss of mankind's immortality, the Slayers were thrust into a difficult and painful situation of ending human life, often well before its time, then surrendering the spirit to an unknown fate. The lore of the spirit grew from the Slayer's desire to prevent the loss of these souls, anchoring them to places on Earth in their former bodies. But this wasn't enough to protect the ghosts from the depredation of loyalist reapers. Finally, the rebel Halaku decided on a more desperate course, the construction of a haven outside the physical universe where God's reapers couldn't find the souls of the dead. The first step in this plan was to learn the ways of stabilizing and traveling to pockets of reality that existed outside the physical cosmos, leading to the evolution of the lore of realms and culminating in the creation of the Shadowlands and subsequently Wraiths. All right, so I just learned something new.
Yep.
That's I'm gonna have to read some Demon later.
Demon's got some nice little stuff in it. Yeah, so these are basically your death angels. Yeah, your angels of death. And they're fucking badass.
Right.
This is what
so this
was
lore
used in one of the games, my Madison Under Siege, Demon the Fallen game, where they were trying to break into Madison. One of the Slayers came up, and it was just cool having her play a Slayer and going around and having this concept of whenever she did her angelic form, she looked like a fucking Grim Reaper. And she manipulated and controlled Wraiths, and I was like, I am not going to let I'm going to say, like, your powers over Wraith are king up to anybody. Like, nobody, you'll overpower pretty much any other bonds that have been created and stuff. It was a really fun kind of interesting, but yeah, I like that they're the creators basically of the Deadlands.
Yeah, so it specifically says in this paragraph the creation of the Shadowlands and subsequently Wraiths. Does that mean the Tempest had already existed beforehand?
I guess you could probably argue that the Tempest existed beforehand, but the Shadowlands didn't really exist. And the Tempest was more of like a realm. But even then, when the world was one, when it was spirit and earth, there was no difference between the two. The realms would be like physically represented even more so than what we have as Mars and stuff like that today. Because there's a lot of them that don't have any physical representation, but all of them would have to have a physical representation. So the Tempest would probably have a physical representation, maybe the center of Earth.
I mean, I would think deep space for that. It's its closest corollary in physical space.
Yeah, possibly that.
But yeah, the cosmology of the world of darkness. It's difficult to get your head around sometimes. But yeah, so the lore of realms, I gotta read into that.
Yeah, that's a cool one too.
All right, so we've got some paragraphs here called Earthbound lores. Is that
yeah, they don't really go. We don't really. We'll go into them deep, but I'll just kind of let you know what it's basically talking about here. Is that okay? So there's the Earthbound, and then there's the demons that come later, the Fallen. Earthbound Fallen are there's like 6 of them that got summoned to Earth after Lucifer taught the secret of how to break out some of the demons from hell. Before he knew that they were, he or she knew before that they were all fucked up by being tortured over there, and they're no longer angels. And the war also is when torment came into play as well, because at first, like, angels were like dancing with each other and being like, da 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 da, I won by dancing and singing and debating and chess and shit like that. And then Cain took a rock and smashed Abel's head open, and then an angel like took a flaming sword and chopped his fucking brother's head off. It was like, fuck! Oh, the shit's real now. And so both sides of the war, I believe, got torment. Angels at that point is when angels started getting torment and stuff. In any case, he didn't really know that they had been really fucked up by the Abyss. And these Earthbound, were created, which are these. They didn't take a human body like the demons that came later in 1999 had to take a human body, which is usually like either somebody that's close to death, dying, just dead, or just a weak individual, and they just crush the soul and smash it into like a little, thing, or eject it out of the of the body. These guys didn't take a body. They're just a like spiritual thing that kind of exists on Earth, which is really weird because it breaks a lot of the most of the time you have to manifest if you're a spiritual thing or something in order to be on Earth, and so they're like spiritual things that are still spirit things on Earth, which is got its all these different kind of lores or rules to it and stuff like that, but you don't really get deep into it because these are your big bads. These are the if you take the side of not wanting to have your demons and even if you really are like these badass evil demons who are going out and just corrupting and crushing humanity underneath your thumb, a lot of them are fighting the Earthbound because they're totally fucking evil and are like these 6 demons that got escaped out, and Lucifer was like, oh fuck, you guys are crazy. They were like his right hand men basically, and the most powerful demons, and these guys were fucking bad as fucking bad can be, tormented the living fuck out of by the abyss, and basically at this point are seen as like the big bad. So they had to learn special powers, these Earthbound lores, and normally you can't learn these unless you wouldn't learn them from the demon or the Dread Kings, but you would learn them. It's possible for Fallen to kind of learn some of these special lores if they kind of learn it on their own type thing.
Okay, so I guess my thing was I had always assumed that the character that you play in Demon was also referred to as an Earthbound, but that isn't right.
Correct. Yep.
I am now gathering.
Yep.
So the Earthbound is it only 6?
Yeah, it's like I'm not 100% sure on that. I know that and I'm not 100% sure it's 6, but I believe it's 6. Earthbound, like the 6th original that Lucifer let out, or got humans to let out, actually. But I don't think more came later, but it's possible more came later too. But I believe that they refer to them as the Dread Lords, and there's like 6 of them, maybe 7.
Yeah. Well, and it's also World of Darkness, so you can change it however you want. You can say there's tons of them. You can change up their names. You can do whatever you want. But yeah, so the Earthbound are kind of the bad guys then that you're fighting.
Right, yeah. That's the original base concept of it, just like when you start off in Vampire or when you start off in Werewolf, the first thing you're doing is fighting the worm. You don't have to fight the Earthbound, but that's kind of the basis of the game. You can take it off into all different types of ways that you can do things. You're playing fucking demons, so it's even more open-ended than playing like a werewolf. But
yeah, it's kind of the default setting of the game is you are playing a demon, you fight the Earthbound.
Yep, you're trying to keep your humanity, you're trying not to become too tormented of a soul, and you're battling between that. But there's definitely you're a fucking demon, so you have
so let's start real quick at the end here. You say you're trying not to be too tormented. What happens to your character if I'm guessing if your torment gets too high?
I'm not sure if there is a mechanic for that, but I believe that it would be similar to like having a Humanity 0 character in Vampire. But Vampire is the only one that really does like a mechanic where it says like eventually your character is unfucking playable. Like you're too fucking crazy with what you've done. And I don't necessarily think that I'm not 100% sure if it's built into the game, but I kind of would play it like at 10 torment, you're kind of done. Like you're now one of the bad guy NPCs out there that are trying to fucking destroy the world, basically.
Yeah. Is there another way for a demon character to end? Is it, they have normal health levels?
So they do have normal health levels. They do have really fast healing and stuff like that. Very similar to like werewolves. But the true destruction comes at aggravated +1. But you can shoot the living fuck out of them, and eventually they'll get back up. But if you aggravate them, you burn them alive, then they're dead.
Yeah. Does something specific happen to a demon character when it dies? Does it just go back to the abyss, or is it completely obliterated?
So I believe that it is obliteration. I remember reading something about this, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but I believe it is obliteration. I don't believe they go back to the abyss, but that would be the other possibility. I would believe to say if they go back to the abyss, but since there's like the abyss is cracked open, it'd be easy to kind of get back out. So maybe that's a way of being able to return with a new personality and character, but so I mean, you could probably play it that way if you wanted to, if that isn't the way that it's played. So
yeah, I'm sure it's in one of the books somewhere that we haven't read.
I thought I remember reading. I do remember reading something about this. I just can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah. So speaking of how a demon character would finish, how does a demon character start out? Like character creation, what's the general idea of how they come into being? Is it a demon who takes over a person's body, or
Right. So
what's your conception of that?
You take a human character that you have a life, a history, skills and attributes and idea. You don't really have to build out that character sheet at all, but you need to have that in mind. Who was the human behind this? And then you take the demon that you're taking out of the abyss. Now, the interesting part about the demon aspect of it is that and there's a special trait, a background trait called not memoriam. It's I can't remember what the name of the background trait is exactly, but it basically is your ability to remember before you were in the abyss. And so a lot of them don't even remember who they really are or what they were before they got into the abyss, and what their true angelic name is or anything like that. They've kind of been twisted and don't really remember a lot of stuff. And so most of them don't really remember who they are exactly. So it's a blending. And then once you get into a human, so the human either was weak-willed and had like a willpower of 3 probably or lower, and just was didn't have a strong will for life, or is a person who is dying, or a person who is heavily drug addict kind of situation that they're in, and the demon comes in and takes over the body. Now when they take over the body, they meld with the human. They don't subvert like complete and utter destruction of what the human was, even if they say that they did. That's a lie. There's a mix that happens when this procedure happens, and it's kind of what makes them, and that's why I think they get destroyed and they don't go back to the abyss. Like once you're here on Earth and they had to do this, like they couldn't exist in the state that they were. They weren't as powerful. They were weakened by so much more time inside of the abyss than what the Earthbound were, that they couldn't just stay angelic things. They had to actually take a form and jump into a human body. And so that is one of the big things that allows for them to make a whole new personality in the game. So you're not really just a demon and you're not just a human, you're a mix of these two things and what comes out afterwards.
Yeah, so then there would be a possibility that you know, a GM could theoretically put stuff onto your character like, hey, this person that the human body knew is like, trying to say hi to you or something like that.
Yes, and you might have an
Like you
emotional
basically,
attachment to them. Like
you basically have to continue living that person's life.
Yeah, to
kind
a certain
of.
degree. Some of them are dead because you get them just after they died or just as they're dying, and so you can do the I did die but I'm not dead, and then have the whole funeral and then get out of the fucking grave and go.
Yeah.
You don't get cremated, so.
Well, that's I'm sure there's a lot of different possibilities there.
Yeah, so a lot of the stuff that you retain from your demon stuff is your house and stuff like this general idea of what you were as a demon, and then the idea is that you're supposed to play the human that got enhanced by a demon kind of aspect of the game, because unless you have a lot of memory of what came before the abyss, if you don't remember shit, or you don't really remember even if you have like none in it, you probably don't even remember much about the abyss. You're like, I'm basically a newborn being that has a lot of power and knowledge to a certain degree, but not really a concept of having used or where I got this knowledge from.
Oh, I see. So the character creation in Demon is kind of like you're mostly the human, and you get possessed by a demon who has goals and kind of a like nebulous idea of what it is in its head that gets injected into a person.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, you're technically one being in the end, and the idea is that you did shunt out the human soul, or you dug it deep into like the essence of who you are, which is probably even worse for the demon. But basically in the sense that you are just one being, but the being that you are is not really that angel anymore that you were when you were in heaven, or the angel that got tormented the fuck out of in the abyss. You're now something new. You're a fallen.
Yeah. So is there an aspect of the setting where fallen seek each other out, seek out new ones? Is that an aspect of the setting?
I believe that it is. To tell you the truth, I never really got too much into what the setting was. I always kind of used the idea of demon as being, you guys escaped and now a bunch of demons are more individuals, is how I've always taken demon. But there is factions, so there are some groups that did form after the abyss cracked open. So the main one that I play with a lot, just because I use it for my Madison Under Siege setting, is the Luciferians, who is the Lucifer's standing army. The goal is that their morning star, or that they'll find their morning star and ensure that they have a strategic advantage for when the time comes to pick back up the war once again. But I mean, the basis of them is basically they're trying to find Lucifer, and they all have ideas of what Lucifer is going to do, so they kind of argue within themselves about that, but they all agree that the goal is to find Lucifer and do whatever the fuck Lucifer wants to do, and to build up an army of people who are ready to fight the big whatever the fuck thing is going to happen. Either the angels are going to come back, or whatever the fuck is happening right now, because the world is ending in 1999 and beyond. White Wolf kind of set up the world to be like, yeah, everything's going to go fucking tits up at this point. Everybody's been saying the end of the world is going to be coming for thousands of years, but it's fucking here now.
Yeah. So is it true that the lore basically said that all of these demons, these fallen, basically got created in 1999 during the Great Maelstrom?
Right. Yeah. That majority, there is concepts that just like there is with the Earthbound, there are ways for demons to get out of hell or out of the abyss. So there's possibilities that they escaped prior to the abyss, but the game design is that you are a demon that escaped in 1999.
Okay.
Because in 1999, the
Interesting.
door rips open from the Avatar storm in the Maelstrom.
Yeah. Should I go ahead and read the factions here?
Sure, go ahead.
Alright, so the factions. Upon their escape from the Abyss, the Fallen divided their society into 5 factions based on their outlook on humanity, God, and themselves. Each faction is comprised of like-minded demons who, although from different houses, share similar goals. The Faustians, their goal is to foster humanity's divine potential, the divine spark that burns in every human, and then turn it against God. Whether they intend to be the ones who encourage that potential or the ones who enslave it depends on each member's opinion. The Cryptics. These demons stand for the search for knowledge. This allows for a variety of options and no single way to classify them as long as the demon claims the search for information about the fall and their imprisonment as their goal. The Luciferians. Lucifer's standing army. Their goal is to find their morning star and ensure that they are at a strategic advantage when the time comes to pick up the reins of the war once more. The Raveners, nihilists of the highest order, these demons stand for nothing at all except for the destruction of everything that is creation. They feel that if they've lost the war, then no one deserves to hold the prize. And finally, the Reconcilers. For the most part, standing against the of demon society as a whole. These demons are penitents who search for redemption from God or humanity in some fashion.
Yeah, so you still
Right.
are not, even if you're fighting the Earthbound, you're not necessarily good, and everybody kind of hates on God because they feel like they all got fucked over by him. But yeah.
Well, these are the angels that originally rebelled against God's plan, right?
Right. Yeah, because they saw that it basically, one of the things that they talk about is that a bunch of angels went to God and were like, "Hey, can you tell me why the plan ends? Like, according to everything that because there's those dudes that get to find the flaws in the plan basically and fix them." And they said, well, there's this big black spot in in the year 2000, basically, or whatever. But way the fuck out there, we're seeing that the world's going to fucking end. There's this big black spot. And they're like, God, what are we going to do about this? And God was like, oh, okay, well, if you want to know about it, come here. And he shows them, and then they are never seen from again. And so the story goes that God basically destroys every fucking angel that he shows that he's going to destroy the world or the universe, or and it is a distrust in God's plan basically.
Yeah, I'm trying to come up with like a metaphor. The only thing I can come up with is like if you had a really popular television show and all the people that worked on it went to the head writer and they're like, hey, we see that you've only got the entire story is only 7 seasons. We want more than that. We want it to go on forever. And so they get angry about it. That's basically what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that's a good
Except it's an entire universe.
Right. Why are you canceling the show? We don't want you to cancel the show. We're going to tell the fans.
We built all this shit for you. Yeah. We built all this shit for you, and you're just going to end it? Stupid. And he's like, you're fired.
Yeah, basically.
Pretty much it.
Yeah, pretty much. Awesome. Well, so that brings us to almost an hour here. So I think we're going to go ahead, and I think this is a good point to wrap up, unless there's anything else about that you want to kind of go over.
I mean, you did have that last question, which is how do they fit into the world of darkness? demon doesn't usually pop up in a lot of the games that I've played. So if you have any specific way that you think it should interface with any game lines, what would that be?
I mean, the way that I kind of see demon being used is that if you're gonna have them after 1999, you can use them as powerful bad guys or powerful allies. But I would probably see, if you're not playing demon being used as the characters would see the demons as all bad guys and maybe learn later on that there's demons fighting demons as well. But I would probably set them up as antagonists for the most part.
Interesting.
Just because it would be fun to have. I think it just would be better in story mode for them to be used as an antagonist than some kind of support character. It just make more sense.
Yeah, I could definitely see it as you could have an NPC in a campaign that is always a demon, but you never actually see them do any demon stuff.
I would say that it'd be interesting to have a demon that you never reveal until maybe way late into the game that it's a demon. That they always just think it's a mortal dude that is helping them in some way, shape, or form. That's not using any magical powers or anything, and then you find out,
Yeah.
Surprise.
Although now that you bring that up, the possibility that a demon pretends to be some sort of other supernatural style, I could see a demon pretending to be a mage for a while.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and the thing is that you would think, well, they don't have all the powers that are in the spheres, and it's yeah, but most mages don't, and their paradigm limits them. So this is, he could a lot of things could pretend to be mages. Actually, I think majority of supernaturals have the ability to infiltrate a mage society. If it wasn't for aura reading and maybe a few other kind of things that you can do to detect something's not supernatural, but those are all up to the GM, I think, because I know that Terry talks about he does not like aura reading. He hates the idea of being every supernatural being able to know other supernaturals, and that and I kind of like that idea, is that it's not as simple as the technocracy just turns their satellite to supernatural mode and it gets to see where every supernatural is on Earth.
Yeah. I'm thinking more in terms of if I was playing or if I had an NPC who was a demon and he went and tried to infiltrate some mages and say I am a mage, hello. I think the mages especially would be really able to be no, you're not. Your powers are definitely not working the right way. But if a demon went to
that mages can never say your powers are not working the right way. Now, are you doing awakened magic versus magic? I guess you might have a little bit of a debate but the thing is that how you're doing your magic can be paradigm based. It is paradigm based. So what somebody sees is the only thing is the magical, that goes down to going back to whether you can detect a supernatural as supernatural or not. If you can easily detect supernaturals, then I go with what you're saying. If you can't easily detect supernaturals, I would say mages are going to be one of the hardest groups to be able to say your power doesn't match our powers, because mage powers are all over the fucking place and come from all physically look and actually spiritually manifest in very different ways.
Yeah, but mages have one mechanism that makes their magic work, and that is the avatar.
According to game mechanics,
demons do not.
Yes. Not according to necessarily. You can have a 0 in avatar, and still be an awakened mage. You can have an Arete with a 0 in Eret. Or sorry, you can have an Eret of 1 and a 0 in avatar. You can have an Eret of 10 and 0 in avatar. Avatar is not.
That is true. But mages all have an avatar. The avatar is the thing that goes and changes reality.
According to Hermetics and according to a lot of the people who believe in spheres, and to the people that are technocratic, they call it genius, which is a little, and they believe it's something completely different than Avatar, and it doesn't manipulate reality in any way, shape, or form. And so that's the reason why I'm saying that mages, it's not easy for them to determine, because you can say, well, the technocracy doesn't use an avatar, like, or the technocracy says they don't use an avatar, and they are completely blindsided by the fact that they have this avatar, and it's possible maybe they're right.
Yeah, I guess it might take too long to get into it, but I guess the way that I'm describing this is the way mages change reality is the same way a mechanic uses tools to fix a car, right? It's the way that they interface.
Right, but my thing is you never get to see that. You don't, and nobody, not even mages themselves, truthfully understand how they're doing what they're doing. They interpret it through paradigm. Everything is interpreted through paradigm. So you can't look at what a vampire's growing claws and a Verbana growing claws. There is no difference between the two that you can see in any level of the spectrum of the game besides meta mechanics. Like, if you get all the way down to game mechanics, absolutely you're going to see a difference. But if you remove game mechanics from the thing, there's no way for you to tell the difference between a Verbena growing claws and a werewolf growing claws, and at all. There's no difference between the two.
Okay. So you're coming down on the side that a demon with an appropriate power level could very easily convince a group of mages that he is also a mage.
I'm saying that even at any power level, that I mean, it depends on how you do it. Do you want to make it so that supernaturals know other supernaturals easily? I can just see you do something and I know that you're supernatural, because there's a lot in the game to make that a very big thing, where just seeing auras and stuff like that will tell you what somebody is as a supernatural. So it's extremely hard in the base game, I think, to infiltrate any supernatural group, because all supernaturals have the ability to quote unquote read an aura in some way, shape, or fucking form, and that it specifically gives you whether they're a vampire, a werewolf, a mage. It's maybe higher success rate that you have to get, but eventually an aura read will determine that. So base game wise, I would say no. In my games, I'm leaning and I'm starting to move much more towards the world is much more secret, and it's very hard for supernaturals to know that other supernaturals exist. And if they encounter supernaturals, it's extremely hard for them to know that they're supernatural. And once they do know they're supernatural, it would be extremely hard for them to prove that it's not their group's supernatural, because depending on how you're doing it, mage specifically would be really hard for them to say whether you're a mage or something else.
And I would definitely agree with that. That's a perfectly valid way to run the game.
But I would say you're right in general. In general, yes, there is a difference between how all the powers are done and stuff like that. So with aura reading and that type of magic, you should be able to determine whether a power is a vampire power or a werewolf power or a mage power.
Yeah. But it's a lot more fun when a demon infiltrates your mage group and is there for an extended period of time, because it makes an awesome reveal.
Yeah.
Despite one of your players being a rules lawyer and being like, I would have been able to read his aura. It's like, well, no. You just can't.
Well, I think that is something that you should establish at the beginning of your games if you're going to do cross supernatural stuff. Or if you're even going to
that's probably a good idea.
Dealing with anybody that has aura reading. The moment they have the ability to to do those types of things is when you should really mention, and even before they purchase those things, because that can also piss off players, is when you're like, oh, you just bought this power, well, let me explain how it actually works. So house rules, like saying that your world is built on secrecy, and so you're not allowing for aura reading to reveal supernatural characteristics, is something you should probably let characters know about, or players know about. Characters don't need to know that, but
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm done.
yeah. Awesome.
Good argument.
Well, so one of the things that we're going to do here as we're wrapping up, we're just going to let you know that this is the final episode for Season 3 of Crossing Darkness. We will no longer be doing the talk show on Sundays for Crossing Darkness. Instead, we're going to be creating a new podcast called The Age of Stories that will be talking about gaming and stories of the 21st century. Very similar to what we're doing right now, except for it's going to expand to, which we've already kind of done, is expand into MMORPGs, into video games, into what if we want to talk about Final Fantasy, we're going to have an episode on Final Fantasy. We're going to be keeping Crossing Darkness. Crossing Darkness is going to be primarily for Movies of Darkness and our World of Darkness actual plays. And we might have like a talk show episode here and there down the line. But the primary focus of Crossing Darkness moving forward into Season 4 is going to be switching up to changing the gears to being more of an actual play and more of a place for our Movies of Darkness type stuff.
Yeah.
So awesome. Go ahead and definitely check out our website, the ageofstories.com. We'll make sure to get a link in the show notes here. Awesome hanging out with all of you.
Yeah, and don't forget to tune in to our Mage of the Ascension game, Technogate, on Monday nights at 7 p.m. Central Time on Twitch at twitch.tv/Golden Age Stories. And remember, that's Gul'dan spelled Guldan.
Awesome. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week on our first episode of the Age of Stories podcast. Good night.
See you then, guys.